On August 8th, 2013, Kings Island showed us the world's longest inverted coaster, and their announcement looked something like this. I'm Ryan Suhr, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics. Tower Topics is a podcast for the Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Don, you might have been there that day, right?
I was there that day. It was one of the most memorable days I had in my PR career. A lot of work went into the planning and the execution for that announcement. It was a little bit different than the traditional announcement in that it was done at night, 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, when sending out the invitations to the news media that we were going to unveil what we were going to be opening in 2014. And every single person out in the media that received it reached out to me and said, "I think you got a typo on your thing here. You're saying it's going to be at 10 p.m. You meant 10 a.m., correct?" No,
Mm-mm.
nope, 10 p.m. And that was totally different, non-traditional. For the news media, everything else had always been in the morning or maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That's when the media is available. So it was a high risk, for Kings Island at the time, and whether or not the media would be able to come out. But because of the theme, what the ride was with Banshee, it just lended itself to a nighttime event. We wanted the park guest to be part of that experience, to be there for the announcement. There'd been a lot of, anticipation, excitement, countdown to the announcement day. The guests were all about it. Pretty much all summer there was the teaser campaign that was going on. If you were over an action zone, you'd hear different things, the Banshee scream, or you'd peek through the fence and the scarecrow's looking back at you, or the silver combs. We had those.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the park, they'd be in trees, they'd be on the ground. Somebody would go into a restroom and find it on the counter. The silver comes with the silver hair, was one of the things. So just a lot of fun, just getting everybody amped up for that announcement. And, it worked. It was an electric atmosphere, felt like a rock concert. Everybody was, pretty much wall to wall in Action Zone, all the way back past, Congo Falls, the entrance to Invertigo. I mean, just a sea of guests. And a lot of them got there early. They sat down and picked their spot out. And from the time the park opened until the announcement at 10 p.m., they had their spot. So that was also fun to see that and how the guests were anticipating it. But uh, yeah, just a fun and memorable night. What do you remember about it, Ryan?
So one thing that always kind of struck with me, and I've been meaning to ask you about this for like, I don't know, 10 years now at this point, but I remember you kept on going up to the podium and you would say like, "Hey, everyone, get ready. We're going to announce in 5 minutes or whatever." But I feel like you went up there and you would stand there and wait to hear a Banshee scream and then you'd make the announcement. Was that a timing thing or is that just something that I was making up? Like in my
I
head?
think I wasn't, trying to tie it in with a Banshee scream or something. I think it was just one of those things that, I want to say I was maybe like 90 minutes before. I would say 90 minutes until,
Hmm.
the big announcement. Then I come back and say 60 minutes until the big announcement, 30 minutes until the big announcement. And then I got into where it was, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and here we go. So there was no intent to try to align it with the Banshee scream. I think if, that's what you were seeing in the crowd, then it worked out a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of like when you have lights that are moving to music. Like if they don't work with the music, your mind will make it happen anyway. But you mentioned that you did a 10 p.m. announcement, and I think a lot of the people listening to this podcast would probably have been there, or at least have seen the video of it and stuff. So internally, was that your idea, or was that something that was like a group thing, or what?
It's collaborative. We were collaborative about it. What was the best way to introduce this ride? Everybody was on board that, the theme of the ride, lent itself to a nighttime announcement. It had never been done before like that. So, I had to give my feedback on how that might impact us with the media. I told them they're normally ready to, begin their broadcast at that time, and they got their stories packaged and things. Uh, but we also thought at the time, if the media could not come out that night, that they still would certainly talk about it the next morning. We would have the press kits and everything to them. They would have the animation video and the renderings and that. So there wasn't a concern about that point, about that. It was more about, the interview opportunity with the park GM and, a couple other people's, myself, whoever they wanted to talk to, guest, they wouldn't have had that opportunity. So that would have been the missing link to it. But we still would have had, you'd had the rest of August, September, November, December, January, February, March to let people know that this ride was opening. So there wasn't a concern about awareness or nobody knowing what we were going to do. So we moved forward with it and took that risk. Every media outlet still came out.
Hmm.
Wasn't ideal for them, but they all came out from Cincinnati. We had Dayton media. We had media from Columbus, Indianapolis, Louisville. I mean, it was just packed with media. And then we had, our friends from KI Central, were there
Hmm.
covering it. We had some of the other channels that were really just getting off the ground. Some of the YouTubers and that was just becoming in vogue with what was happening there. So we had a number of them that were there. So that was just packed with media. One of the bigger media events that I was ever involved in, outside of a new ride opening. But for an announcement and getting all these people out to the park, you know, I was busy. Because I had to, find ways to get these TV trucks in and fit them all into the area where we were doing this.
Yeah, while the park
Right
was
now,
operating too, right?
yeah, yep. You got the chicken shack back there, so they were just like, trucks lined up along that path going down
Hmm.
to doing Vertigo. So they were back that way. Some of them were over on the other side, which would be my right hand side, kind of near where the not the entrance to Banshee, but more where the exit is. Some of
Hmm.
them were over that way. But just wall to wall media, and I had to make sure as soon as we got done announcing this, I had to gather them all together and get them in one spot so they could, get some sound from the GM or get some sound from me. I had to line up some guests and find some of them that they could talk to get their reaction. I remember we got church pews
I
that
remember that. Yeah, for the
and
media.
I don't know if we bought them from a yard sale or something like that, whatever it was, but
Church
we
sale.
saw it, we found it somewhere, that somebody was advertising they were selling those, and we thought, oh, this will really add to the theme, and that was a last minute thing. We were just going to put some normal chairs out there, so we thought, let's get those, and we put them out there. A couple days before it had rained
Hmm.
and that, so that they got all wet and things. We had to try to put plastic and that over it the day of so it didn't get wet again. That was the other thing on the announcement day, that rain, thunderstorms, all in the forecast for most of the day. There were periods where it would rain. We had the backup plan. We were going to move to the Fest House. We didn't have to do that. But within like 5 minutes of the media getting all of their interviews, you know, it just started raining hard. Then
Hmm.
it started storming and that. So
Yeah.
we got it done just in time. But I think for the guest, that was one of the times that we had done Diamondback, with an in-park announcement in 2008,
Hmm.
daytime. People gathered around. But I think, the ones that were there, they'll remember that, but it wasn't as memorable as this. You were part of the experience. You got caught up into it, with the electric atmosphere that was there that night. Everybody talks about it to this day, how much fun that night was, how memorable it was. And they talk about that video that was released introducing the rides.
Hmm.
And I thought, of all the videos that I had seen in my career leading up to that parks had done, and then really since, I mean, it's right up there as one of the better ones that I've seen. There was a lot of detail into it. You had a polarizing ride, that had been in that area, that Banshee was, I don't want to use the word replacing, but Banshee was taking up that spot.
Mhm.
And, you had to make this ride impactful. You had to make, you almost had to like pass the torch.
Yeah, that's the way I
So
saw it
that,
too. It was incredible
yeah,
closure to see.
yeah, you had to give closure to the thing, right? So I think that was, and that's, the GM at the time, Greg Scheid, he wanted to have Son of Beast coming down in the video to kind of open it up, and then all the supports and everything popping out of the ground.
Mhm.
And here's this amazing new steel inverted roller coaster that you're going to get next year, and it just all worked beautifully together. Now, before we had seen, and toward the end of the summer of 2012, we had video, we had photos of Son of Beast coming down, so we were able to take those videos, those photos, and be able to use that to replicate that for the animation video.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, very cool. So, you mentioned that it was a group effort and you agreed that there was very low risk for the 10 o'clock thing. Was it very difficult to get other departments from the park on board to have the trucks in there? Or, was it a really good symphony of everybody wanted to make this announcement and, they kind of trusted that this is the best way to do it? Like, how did those conversations go? Because obviously there's a
Well, it was
lot
a
that went
one,
into it.
yeah, I mean, a one team effort. Everybody was on board, with it. Everybody was excited
Mhm.
about, what Banshee was going to be. Everybody liked the theme of it. Everyone knew that it fit a nighttime type thing. And for everybody else, it's not, whatever time of the day, it's not good for anybody. You do it at 5 or 6 in the morning, you're inconveniencing somebody. You do it at 2 in the afternoon,
Mhm.
somebody still has to, do the same things. So the time that you were doing it, didn't really change anything. It was just going to be at night. It made it a little bit easier at night because all the guests were gone to get the trucks out. You weren't moving them out from being inside the park at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and trying to weave through, a lot of guests moving down International Street or wherever it would have come from. So from that perspective, that was a little bit easier for everybody to deal with. That the media was going to be there until they were done at 11:30. The guests were all going to be gone by then.
Mhm.
Very easy to just take them out behind Timberwolf right there and get them on their way.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally see that. Now, let me ask you this. I don't think I asked you this before, at least on air. So when you make these announcements, obviously you're involved with four big ones. Not necessarily the PR person for all four, but Diamondback, Mystic, Banshee, and Orion. All right, so four major coasters. So obviously all four have been successful, but is there ever that like moment where you're like, oh my God, what if they hate it? After you build up to this thing for like a year, 18 months, getting ready for this big announcement. Like, do you ever have that thing? You're like almost like throwing a party and you're afraid no one's going to show up, even though you're pretty confident they will.
In terms of media or guests,
Guests.
guests, they'll turn up because they're interested. They're passionate about the park. There's a lot of the coaster fans, especially if
Mhm.
they suspect it's going to be a new coaster. I think when you look back with Diamondback, there wasn't social media, really. I mean, it was just starting, but it wasn't, what it has emerged into. So you weren't really, thinking too much about if they hate it. It's going to be all over the place like that, and that's what everyone's going to see. So you didn't have that.
So it's never that
You
thought.
got
I didn't mean like
that
did you
part it
guys all
wasn't, but
sit
once
down
you
at a
got to
board
Banshee and
meeting?
Mystic, it was. Yeah, Banshee and Mystic, it was. And I know,
Really?
with Mystic Timbers, everybody was excited about the ride. But when they looked at the stats, it's pedestrian like.
Yeah.
With the 109 feet, in height, that's your highest point. Oh, you're going to go 53 miles an hour top speed. Oh, it's only 3,200, plus feet. So everybody's looking at those numbers. It's too short, not fast enough. All those things. We're out there on social media about it. So there's disappointment that it wasn't a record breaker. Everyone's used to records.
Mhm.
That's what they want to see.
Records only
Instead
matter
of the
on
right.
2 days, the day of the
Yeah,
announcement and the day the ride opens. And beyond that,
it
if it's not a good ride,
doesn't
who
matter.
cares?
Yeah, it's all about the ride experience. Now, I was 100% confident that Mystic Timbers was going to be a great ride.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
It
yeah.
was going to be, for a lot of the guests that visit Kings Island, their favorite ride. I knew it was going to be a favorite ride with a lot of coaster enthusiasts. I had ridden, a Prowler
Mhm.
out at Worlds of Fun. I'd ridden some other
Thunderhead.
coasters, yeah, GCI. So I
Mhm.
knew what it was going to be like. And there was a lot of, some concern that, this thing's not a record breaker like Banshee. It's, are the guests gonna like it? Are they still gonna, want to buy passes and come to the park next year? Are they gonna wait another year to see if we do another coaster? It is a record breaker. And so yeah, there was a lot of that. But I was very confident, and I knew, the ones that, as they were complaining about this not meeting their expectations as a record breaker, and that, we could have done something, different there, that, I knew that I would see those very same people, whether they attended media day as a member of one of the coaster clubs, or they came to opening day or season pass preview day.
Mhm.
I knew that those same people were going to fall in love with that ride. So for me, I was like, I will have to, just watch that for about 5 or 6 months. But once they ride it, they're going to love it. So it, a lot of other people, they're not as, you know, they might not have been as confident as I was after reading the comments and that.
Mhm.
Like, did we do the right thing? And but I felt good about it, and it worked. I mean, I just knew it was going to perform very well for the park.
Well, I mean, at least, just speaking from the time when you were and the manager of the PR, uh, 3 home runs right there, with Diamondback, Banshee, and Mystic, all those are world-class coasters. So that's really cool. Well, I mean, thanks for walking down memory lane with me for that. That's one of my fondest memories of Kings Island. We'll have to do an
Yeah,
episode about what our individual fondest memory is, and we'll tell that story. We'll make that another tower topic, but cool. Yeah. So August 8th, 2013. Uh, by the way, why don't you
10 years though. Yeah, but think
what?
about that, Ryan. 10 years ago, does it feel like 10 years have flown by for you? I mean, for me, it's like, you know, where did time go? And that's the one thing, when you're working in the industry, you're always, doing what's next.
Mhm.
So as a guest, you get to, yeah, it slows down for you as a guest because you're enjoying all the different things. But you're always months, thinking down the road ahead of it when you're working for a park.
Yeah.
So the years fly by quick. So people always ask me, was there anything you didn't like about the industry? I didn't like how fast
Yeah.
every year went,
You
because
didn't like how you entered it at 50 and you exited it at 65?
what I did, well, I'll put it this way, I didn't like the fact that, when I entered it, you know, several years into it, it just flew by. Next thing you know, I'm able to get the senior discount at like Bob Evans and
Yeah.
Denny's and Perkins and all those kind of places that now I qualified for the discount. So yeah, I mean, it flew by fast.
Okay, before we break, because we are almost at time, why don't you tell everyone the totally not vain reason why you chose August 8th as the announcement day?
Why we chose August 8th? Because it was 8/8.
Hmm. No other reason for choosing 8/8?
Not that I recall.
Mm.
What are you alluding to?
I'm a little. I thought you had told me that you chose 8 because you have some sort of tie into that number, and that's why you thought that was. I mean, granted, like 8/8 was a memorable date, so it probably worked really well anyway. But I thought
Well,
there
8
was
was
more
one
to
of
the
my
story.
favorite numbers, but no, I think we just, when you're in the marketing department, you're just kicking around different dates and when to do it. 8/8 just kind of had a ring to it that would look, be easy for everybody to remember. Nobody was going to forget that we're announcing this on 8/8.
Yeah, and it
If you
wasn't
say
like a
like when you
Saturday
say
or
like
anything.
8/14, or 8/13, everyone's like, what? It's
Yeah,
harder to remember the dates. But this was something that was going to be easily ingrained into everybody's mind, when this was happening. So
yeah, and
there
sometimes it
wasn't a
really
lot.
works. So let me
Yeah,
ask you this off the cuff: when was the Beast Media Day? What was the date?
the Beast Media
Yep,
Day, August 13th.
exact.
I mean, not August. I mean, April 13th.
Yep, April 13th, Friday the 13th. That was so
Yeah,
good that was before I was born, and even I know that date. You know.
yeah, April 13th, and that just happened to be where the calendar fell.
Hmm.
Because the park opened on a Saturday, the 14th, so for that season. So, the park normally opening mid-April. If the 13th had been like on a Wednesday or something, that wouldn't have happened. So that was just coincidence that it happened to be that date. But it sounds good, doesn't it?
It does, and it's very memorable. All right, cool, cool. Well, that was the Banshee announcement. We'll probably do an episode on the whole ride, but because I have a grave there, so I don't want to talk about that.
Do you
But
remember Media Day for the ride the next year? I mean, in April. Do you remember Media Day for it?
oh yeah, no, I was there. I was.
Do you remember how many layers of jackets and sweatshirts and everything else that you needed?
That was the Good Morning America filming the day before Media Day. Are we allowed to talk about this now? It's been 10 years or 9
It's been
years.
10 years. You can talk
Okay,
about it. Yeah.
so let me tell you the story. So the day before Media Day, I randomly get a call or text from you saying like, "Hey, can you come up to the park at like 5? You get to ride Banshee." And I'm like, "I get to ride Banshee a day before everybody else? Hell yeah." So 13 so 2013 going into 14, if you may recall, was like the coldest winter ever. And so I remember distinctly wearing two different coats, like one on top of another, because it was really cold out, on top of the fact that we were going to be riding this roller coaster. So I get there, they put us on the ride, purple train, back seat, all the way on the left, like stage left. I remember it. Got to ride it, had a great ride, stuff, fantastic. They had us ride it like two more times, and then finally they're like, "Guys, we really need this shot without coats because this is going to run over the summer, and we can't make it look like we're running this in the winter." And we're like, "Oh my god!" So we all take off our coats. We ride this horribly frigid 60 something mile an hour ride, come back to the station. Half of us are treated for hypothermia. I just made that up. That's not true. Well, anyway, we they finally air the segment, and every single segment they aired was everybody wearing their coats anyway. So we totally took this freezing ride in 40-degree temperatures without coats on for nothing. But nonetheless,
Yeah, there's a lot of Diamondback photos that are out there from a photo shoot we did just before
mhm,
Media Day for it.
yep,
And it's got the blue sky and the clouds and everything, which was, that's how the day looked, but it was in the 40s.
yeah,
And everybody, we had them wearing shorts and t-shirts, make it look like summer. And we had heaters and things that when they would get off the ride, they could heat up for a few minutes and then you got to get right back on
mhm,
and ride again. But maybe they rode 15, 20 times in, 40-degree plus, temperatures. And as I remember that, so every time I see those photos, you know, that are out there, I just remember how cold
oh
that was. And I had to take several cycles, to fill in for people as they needed to sit out a couple of rides.
yeah.
And it was cold.
Yeah, and so another memory popped in. This isn't Banshee, but this is very relevant to what we're talking about. So, when Diamondback opened, this was before you had Fun TV. So I was like the only video editor you knew that was available like overnight. So I remember you gave me a bunch of DVDs and you said, "Can you make like a Q video?" So the first like janky Q video was something that I edited using like free software on a Windows computer that could barely handle it. And I distinctly remember not only did I have to edit around like when you guys it was like a safety video. So like put your stuff in the bins, put your feet up on the thing to you have to wear your shoes. But I had to edit around the people shivering, especially the employees that were like standing there with their hand up. So clearly you had to get the shot. It wasn't a real shot of them doing the all clear thing. So they're like shaking. But on top of that, the camera guy that you hired, when he was trying to get still shots, he was clearly shivering too. So I had to do like corrective stuff, for that. But that only lasted a couple years because the
Yeah.
technology to edit at home wasn't there. But if you want to see some
I
quality,
kind of remember that one.
mhm.
You do so many different projects like that that it doesn't always, you don't always think about it until you just start talking about it. So I don't really remember, too much about it. But now that you mention it, it's starting to come back a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I remember that because I remember it was like about it was 2 days before that you asked me before media day, and media day was like on Friday or Saturday or something. I can't remember, but so I had you gave me the DVDs. I had to rip the DVDs, which had to use like illegal software, even though like these were DVDs that you'd burn, because that's just the world we lived in at the time. And then had to edit them, and then some of the content. Remember, there was time code on one of them, so I had to
oh
drive up.
yeah.
So I live in Kentucky, I still do, and I had to drive all the way up to the park twice to get the right footage. Uh, and then I got it to you at about 4:30 in the morning, about an hour before media day, and I just remember just that was the most exhausted I'd ever been. I was up for about 50 hours straight. But I remember the next day you're like, "Hey, can you make another video?" And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." But if you go into the Banshee shop over the fireplace, there's a very rudimentary video of just like the ride coming through, which is random transitions and stuff. That was the same series of days. I edited that. I burned it to a DVD. That exact DVD
Yeah.
probably that I gave them is still playing all day, every day in the Banshee gift shop. So, think about old Ryan next time you see that. But we were talking about Banshee. I'm sorry, that was a Diamondback gift shop, not the Banshee gift shop. This is all Diamondback we're talking about. But
Right.
yeah, cool. Yeah, well, thanks for the walk down memory lane again. That was really cool. I'm Ryan Suhr along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.